trying to. I've gone through this, so I have a sense of time, but that's not a strength. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Welcome to the PCA Double Gold Coach Workshop. My name is Mark Newman. As you've heard, I've been coaching for over 4 decades, 45 years to be exact, and in a variety of places. The last 26 with the New York Yankees, and during that 26-year period of time, I've served in a variety of different roles, but essentially they were coaching. They had titles like coordinator of instruction, director of player development. Ultimately, I was senior vice president of baseball operations, and that involved scouting and player development in the United States and internationally. Supervised or worked with 100 coaches, 60 scouts, sports analysts, trainers, nutritional consultants, sports psychologists, all kinds of smart people that helped me grow. I began coaching 9, 10, and 11-year-olds in 1970 while I was in law school, and was loved it, and ended up coaching high school kids after that, 16 years in college, and then ultimately, as I mentioned, with the Yankees. As the title suggests, this is a workshop, and maybe the key part of that is work, and what I'm asking all of you to do is work with me, or let's work together. We need your participation. During my time with the Yankees, we had an operational maxim that was basically this: all of us are smarter than any one of us. The people in this room, or the people on this hangout, have great ideas and experiences, and we're all going to be better off if we can participate and exchange ideas. When you came in, you got a book, and the book is titled The Power of Double Gold Coaching. It's written by our founder and CEO, Jim Thompson. It's a pretty cool piece. I've read it several times. In fact, my first contact with PCA was through Jim's books, and there are several, and I found them enthralling and engaging, and I learned a lot. It made me wish I could have run into him 40 years ago. And this concise, compact version of a bigger book that he wrote, which I think is called The Double Gold Coach, and that's a long one. Read it if you'd like. I find it very interesting. This concise, compact version of it has tools and principles that will be really valuable to you. I think, and I don't usually do this, but I think you got to start by reading the foreword. It's by Phil Jackson, 10-time NBA champion, and his explanation of why he's involved in PCA is eloquent. And I've read it several times. I find it inspiring, and I think you may find it inspiring as well. My involvement with PCA, as I mentioned, was an outgrowth of contacts with people who are on the National Advisory Board. There's some extraordinary coaches, and through reading Jim's books. And it's a fabulous organization, in my estimation. It's the way I'm going to spend my time in retirement, is trying to help all coaches do a better job of reaching kids. And let's start with a video. Now, this is the Kevin Durant thing, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My question leads to the question, in your life, who is the most influential coach? I would ask you to take a minute and think about that. It probably won't take you long to come to a name. And then spend a couple of minutes with the person next to you discussing your most influential coaches. And then we'll come back together, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about them if you're willing to share. So that's whatever that takes, 2, 3.
Yep.
I don't know how you want to handle that in this context.
Well, let me ask you, Mark. Are you going to keep going from here, or are you going to switch over to one of the principles?
My plan was, and it's a plan I'm willing to change at the drop of a hat, was to go from here to just a brief description of the Double Gold Coach model, uh, the two goals and the predominance of the second, and then to a quick listing of the principles. And our focus today is the first principle, the Elm Tree of Mastery. And that
Got it. You can stick with that. Let's then say, let's say that we Kelly and I, we've done our paired share, and then you had some kind of a group discussion about, or some sharing about the coaches that had the greatest impact on us, and then you move forward from there.
Okay. And let me. All
Thanks
right,
for joining us, Pete.
Hi, good morning.
Pete, how are you?
I'm fine, Mark.
Good.
So now you have extra audience people to play with here, Mark.
Good. Well, we're in midstream, Pete. This slide, I'm not sure what number it is because I've got the presentation view available or up. Now, it's the double goal, the PCA model of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the coaching model is it really describes a continuum. And on one end is the positive goal model, and the other end is something a lot less attractive and negative. The double goal coach model is characterized by two goals, as the name suggests. Goal one, striving to win, and this is, I think, one of the things that attracted me to PCA is that they recognize that coaches and players, fans and parents want to win. We don't deny the existence of that motivation. In fact, it's included in this double goal coach model. The second goal, and the more important goal in our estimation, is the goal to teach life lessons. And as I mentioned, there is a continuum from the double goal coach model, the positive coaching model, to what we consider to be the negative model, or the win at all cost model. And it's my hope as a coach to move continually in the direction of the positive model. But I would ask quickly if you could describe or provide some descriptive words for what you would consider to be a positive coach. Yes, that's supportive. Yes, good. Excellent.
Caring.
Absolutely. Without question, foundational.
Aware.
Role model. Yes, thank you. All of those things are significant in a lot of ways. And when I was a young coach, I probably would have gotten quickly into technical expertise. Well, I can teach you how to bunt. I can teach you how to crossover dribble. And as I was in this, as I coached longer and longer, I found out that those supportive, caring, role model examples are really the key to having the kind of relationship with players that lead to good things. One of the interesting things, or one of the challenging things about one of the interesting and challenging things about the double goal coach model is that both goals tend to support each other much of the time. In fact, I'm always surprised by how much your willingness to teach life lessons ends up having a beneficial effect on outcomes. That's been my experience over a long period of time, and the experience of other coaches for whom I have great respect. But there inevitably can be, or will be, a collision between the two. And I don't know, have any of you, Pete, Ruben, Kelly, experienced a collision between those two objectives in your coaching experience?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Having to discipline a really good player that might include reduced playing time because of, bad behavior or not living up to, the standards of the team.
Right. Pete, all your years as a coach.
Yeah, I'm a little like Ruben. I think we've changed. It's like, you discipline a young man and he has to forfeit some games because of behavior. You've become the bad guy because now it's going to cost us a win, maybe. So, I think that's where one of the biggest change occurs.
Kelly, same.
Yeah, I think for me, going from coaching college and now recently coaching the little guys, I have an equal playing time rule. And it's really hard, even, for 12-year-olds, when you get into a tough game and a tough competition, you want to keep the kids that are playing well in the game. And You know,
because they don't
sometimes,
play as much.
yeah, you look at the little bench warmers and you think, oh gosh, if I put them in right now, it's going to be trouble. So I think that's where I've had my most recent struggle.
Well, we're going to be. It seems like we're even more challenged in this regard now. I read a New York or Los Angeles Times article a couple of weeks ago about the sources of lawsuits in public schools, and one of the top 5 is lawsuits over playing time and disciplining players. So
Wow.
even if we're being tugged in a lot of different directions, but I suggest we continue to fight the good fight and have goal 2 predominate. That brings us to, I'm skipping development zone, and it brings us to PCA principles, the double goal principles, and there are 3 of those. We're going to focus on the first today, the elm tree of mastery. Mastery is a fancy word that seems to pop up a lot now among really, really fabulous coaches, but they use another word. They call it process. But I think it's still mastery, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we've got a couple videos. The first video I would play would be the effort is not enough video from, I think they're both from Marshall, I think, or Weir Marshall. And the second is basically the effort is everything video from Weir Marshall also. I would think I would skip the why Olympians earn more medals, or which Olympians earn more medals, and because of a subsequent story. But anyway, I would play both of those, and follow up by saying I had a meeting a couple of years ago with Nick Saban, who's now as most know, the football coach at Alabama. And he told a story that absolutely underscores the ultimate value of pursuing mastery as a coach as opposed to a scoreboard orientation. And quickly, the story revolved around a football game on November the 7th, 1998. Nick was coaching at Michigan State. And this story he told us in response to a question I posed to him: was there any watershed moment in your life as a coach, at any point that you think, man, I'm onto something really good here, and it subsequently had a beneficial impact? And he cites this game, 11/7/1998, Michigan State versus Ohio State. He's in his 3rd year at Michigan State. They're kind of 500-ish, maybe 2 games over 500. For the totality of those 3 years, they're 4-4 in '98. Ohio State is 8-0. They're ranked number 1 in the country. Saban has this guy who he's befriended. He's a professor in psychology at Michigan State. He uses him to this day at Alabama, used him at LSU, used him with the Miami Dolphins. His name is Lenny Rosen. The players call him the Wizard Dude, and he's got gray hair and a long gray beard and does not look anything like any of us have seen wandering around athletic departments in our lives. But Nick Saban, who seems like a hard-nosed, no-nonsense guy, is a big enough learner and committed to improving so strongly that he uses Lenny Rosen. Lenny Rosen said, all you can do, in response to Nick's question, man, we're up at the end, something really tough this week in Ohio State. He says, all you can do is one play at a time, one execution at a time. So Saban says our approach was each play has a life and history of its own. The scoreboard means nothing. Distractions, outside things we're going to ignore. Whether the play is good or bad, we move on to the next play. To shorten the story, Michigan State wins 28-24, but that's not the important thing. What the players said and the coaches said afterwards, we felt like we had time, we felt like we were able to focus, we felt like we were in control of our own performance. That, to me, is as strong an endorsement of the principle of mastery as I can imagine. Now, I've passed the 2 video slides, the Joan Duda slide to the Principle 1 Elm Tree of Mastery slide. Scoreboard definition, which is the opposite of what Nick Saban was talking about, what he was trying to avoid, what he had been consumed by in his coaching life. On one side of this slide and the mastery definition on the other. The coach and player focused on scoreboard definition is focused on results. The coach and player focused on mastery is concerned about effort. And I would suggest, and we have had long discussions with a lot of coaches about this, that effort is physical and it is mental, attentional. As I'm coaching 9, 10, and 11 years olds now, I've found how true that, that really is. They give a great effort running to first base, then chase a butterfly in left field. It's a beautiful thing. The mastery, excuse me, I get back to this. The scoreboard focuses on results. The mastery focuses on the mastery approach focuses on effort. The second scoreboard focus is on comparison with others, and here we get effort as the first E in the elm, or as the E in the elm tree analogy. The second, the L, is learning. The scoreboard, it focuses on a comparison with others, which is really a dead-end street. Someone's better than me, someone's worse than me. That really shouldn't affect the way I approach my practice or competition. My goal should be to learn, grow, get better on a daily basis. That's learning. That's the John Wooden definition. Success is peace of mind, is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing that you're becoming the best you can possibly become. That makes a huge difference. It gives the athlete a sense of control, I think. The third, the M part of the elm tree of mastery, is M for mistakes, and it's not really go out and make mistakes. It's that mistakes happen, and that what's key is how we bounce back from them. And it's a huge part of what so many coaches focus on, mental toughness. In some ways, the elm can be mistakes. Sometimes I think of it as mental toughness, but it's all the same kind of thing. It's your ability to get out of what's happened and get into what's in front of you. And that is the bottom line key to the whole mastery concept. It's a next play focus. So what I'd ask of you, if we can back up just a second to effort, one way to get effort is effort goals. If we reward effort, and especially, and I'm a huge fan of rewarding unsuccessful effort, we can make effort a big part of our daily practice and a big part of our competition. I would ask the group now, can you give me a couple examples of an effort goal in your particular sport?
I'll give one.
An effort?
An effort goal I use a lot with youth lacrosse is just running through every ground ball, not stopping, not hesitating, just keeping their pace and just running right through it, and not stopping and chopping. So even if they don't pick up the ball, at least they're keeping their pace, they're keeping their sprint to the ball, their hustle to the ball.
Practice, games, any circumstance, any scrimmage circumstance, any drill.
Yep. Okay. I want to see grass stains on their knuckles. I don't care if the ball's in their stick.
Great, thank you. Pete, baseball?
Mine is, and I relate it so much to your answer of a lot of questions, and when you did effort goals on the when you answered your question on our weekly discussion, just getting young men to run, out of the batter's box, right down first base, and not be running in the outfield, not be slowing down, just be able to give an effort across third base. In fact, I used to have a drill called first, third, and home, and I'd break it up into 3 groups, and the guys at the plate had to fake a swing, run down the line across the base. The runners at first had to go to third base, cutting the base on the inside, and then the others would take a walking lead at third base and go back and tag and go home. But just giving me that effort of, that was the purpose of the drill.
Good. I've seen those. Thanks. Anything else, Ruben?
Well, you talked about how effort can be physical effort and mental effort. So the example I'm going to give, I think, would fall under mental effort. In teaching young volleyball players how to hit an overhand serve, I teach them a setup position. So before they ever go into action, there's a body position, a stance, a way to hold the ball, a place to hold where I want their elbow, and it's very much under their control.
Right.
and so I give them feedback on whether they're in the proper setup position or not. And so their goal is to, no matter what the outcome of the serve is to start with the proper setup position.
Right. That I had a cool conversation with some youth league coaches the other day about trying to get their kids not to chase butterflies. And one of the, how do we know if they're mentally focused? It's just like what Ruben said. There's a pre-pitch movement that an outfielder and infielder makes, and they should make it before every pitch. One of the crystal big ideas in baseball defense is rule 1, this pitch, the ball's going to be hit to me, so you've got to be into every pitch 150 times. That's a challenge mentally. And it's really a challenge for a 9-year-old, I found out. But those are great examples of effort goals. And when we have goals for effort, when we reward effort, whether it's through Player of the Day awards or Dirty Shirt awards or my mom will never get these stains out of my pants awards, those things tend to make effort and learning and the mistake resilience a part of the culture of coaches and players. And coaches who do a great job of developing goals and an award system to surround this mastery concept have a much better chance, in my estimation, of realizing it.
That is time.
That's about as close.
Bravissimo.
That was a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Well, I had stuff left out, or have stuff left over, I guess, but that's normal.
Well, you have to, Mark. Mark, you have to have stuff left over because you can't do it all. You know, you hit us with plenty of stuff. You know, and trying to jam more and more in is not going to make our learning and our experience better. So don't worry about not getting it all in. You'll have another workshop next week, and you can swap out a few pieces.
Exactly.
Good. That's what experience provides, right? After you do a ton of these things.
Yes.
That's good. That's not so good.
I always talk about the drive home. I do the post-game analysis for myself on the way home after a workshop, and I think, oh, I should have said that story, or I should have done that longer. Or, you're constantly forgetting things you should have added in or changed around, and just like post-game.
I hate to talk about that stuff without talking about that talent trap concept and Carol Dweck's mindset. I've read the book twice. I give it to people. It's such a huge idea that almost criminal to leave it out, but I did.
Well, you know what? Then the next time you think about what you're going to take out so that you can put in the mindset. If you feel that strongly about it. My conversations with Jim Thompson over 15 years has been, Jim says, well, what about growth mindset? What about effort goals? What about this? What about that? And I said, Jim, we have at most 2 hours.
Yeah.
We can't do it all. Jim, you tell me, what are the highest priority things? And we'll get as many of those into a 2-hour workshop as we can, but not everything that you've read in the last 50 years, Jim.
Right.
And I think too, Mark, just what you said, I think it's criminal to leave it out. Some things just resonate better with trainers. I'm a huge fan of positive charting and effort goals. I use it all the time, so I make sure that I mention that because that's something that's so easy for me to explain because I use it all the time. Growth mindset, I was a total talent trapped athlete. And so that to me was something personal because I was the one that was told, you're great, you're fast, you're smart. When I was faced with a challenge, I crumbled. So that's something that I use because it connects to me. So if you have something that you said, if you feel so strongly about it, then maybe, cutting down some other stories that are just PCA stories to really bring in something that connects you to a personal experience, I think that's where it is valuable to add it in.
See, I was never a talent trap athlete, so I want to bring it up. So the talent trap athletes in the audience, no offense, Kelly, well, will understand how far they missed the mark.
Exactly. I always say I'm a recovering fixed mindset. There's support groups for us all over the place. Well, Mark, I don't know if you mind starting, Ruben, or
Kelly, could I say one more thing about this before we move on?
Yeah.
So Mark, remember when you're feeling like, shoot, I want to say this, I want to say that, but I don't have time. Remember that they do have this, the Power of Double Goal coaching they're going to take with them, and you can say, I've got to move forward because I see that the time is clicking. But I just want you to dog ear page 19 in the Power of Double Goal coaching, and when you get home before bed, just take 60 seconds to read pages 19 and 20 on the talent trap. I think you'll find it very, so that's one way where you can hit it without hitting it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Kelly, for the interruption.
No. That's okay.
Yeah, I've got a dog-eared too, and I still, at any rate. Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, let's give you some time for some feedback here. I thought you did a lot of great things there, and I don't know, Ruben or Pete, if you would like to start, or...
The one thing I'd like to say, Mark, that you did for me was, as you began to explain certain things and give certain examples, it made me think of certain things I was doing or not doing to get better.
Got you thinking.
To get better as a trainer? To get better as a trainer or as an athlete?
No, to get better as a coach.
As a coach. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because when Mark's talking to me, he's not talking to me as a trainer.
Mm-mm.
He's talking to me.
Right.
He's talking
Absolutely.
to a double goal coach.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that. Great comment. Ruben, how about you?
Yeah, Mark, I think you do so many things well as a trainer. Gosh, I really liked how you opened your workshop. A little bit of background about yourself, the housekeeping items, which they're important, set the tone for an interactive workshop, set up the Power of Double Goal coaching book as a lasting resource. I would say this, I think the biggest concern, Mark, is what you said immediately when you finished is I didn't get everything in. So pacing for all of us trainers, pacing and what we try to include is a challenge for all of us, and that challenge will never go away. So I think one thing that could help, Mark, is in live workshops is that you have someone introduce you, and it's 3 to 5 bullet points that folks can really focus on. So 4.5 decades of coaching. Your work with the New York Senior Vice President Player Development, New York Yankees. 16 years as a collegiate coach. Okay, if that's all I know about you, it's like, okay, here's a guy who's okay. You get what I'm saying? Those three, and then when you're introduced, you can add just a little bit more. A little bit more to that. But let someone say those 3 to 5 things. I think that will help you with the opening piece, moving quickly enough, but doing yourself justice with what folks know about you. Kelly, I'll turn it over to the others. I got other things I could say, but I don't want to dominate the feedback. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Mark, just real quick, with the way I describe you as a trainer, everybody's always looking for like, oh, I want high energy, I want engagement, and you are definitely not a high energy trainer, but you are very engaging. And as Pete said, you get us thinking, and as Ruben said too, just with your experience, the way that you present things, your choice of words is excellent. I think every word that you say, sometimes when I'm evaluating trainers, I'm looking for phraseology or a word that it's not quite in line with Positive Coaching Alliance, and you are right in line. Every word choice from the continuum of double goal coaching, the collision between the two, just the way you spoke of mastery, the Nick Saban example. That story that you told of Nick Saban, that's 5 slides right there. And you just wrapped it all up in a story, and it made it so much more. I just love that so much more than going through the PowerPoint, because you understand the concepts, not just the bullet points. And I think that's a really strong, that's a strength of yours. Also being able to talk about 9 to 11-year-old players with as much passion as you're talking about professional players. And it wasn't saying that this was more important than that. It was, you were talking about the struggles with each and the rewards of each. So I thought that was really, really excellent the way you did that. The other thing that cracks me up is I was looking at, Pete and Ruben and we're cracking up different things that you're saying, and you don't crack a smile once. And I just think it's so funny. Like, you're saying things that actually make us laugh and make us smile, and you're just like, boom, here it is, like such coach mode. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's interesting the way that you bring up funny things, and you just, stay pretty tight to who you are. So
my father was a big fan of Bob Newhart.
Okay.
You know who that is.
I do, yes.
And,
Kelly and Mark, I noticed one smile because I was keeping an eye on that too. It's like, okay, is I'm having fun? Is Mark having fun? And the one time I noticed a smile was when you used the phrase, but I think we should fight the good fight. And there was a smile as you said that. That's the first time I noticed it, and it was well into. I like to see that smile earlier. Maybe a chuckle or two along with your group a little earlier.
But I think otherwise, in terms of keeping the audience engaged, I thought you did a nice job. I was kind of looking at timing. Your story that you told, as again, it was a great story. I think it was very valuable. I think it's good to tell. It was like a 7-minute explanation, and then you had to get into mastery, the bullet points of mastery after that. And there wasn't really a lot of questioning or interaction during the story, which is fine. That story you might want to just cut down slightly. I was taking notes. I thought it was cool. I liked the details of they were 4-4 and we're playing Michigan State, and it was a watershed moment, and Lenny Rosen and picturing the Wizard. I think you're a good storyteller. When I was looking in terms of timing, it was kind of a long story that introed into the principle that you went bullet point by bullet point. So that would just be maybe tighten up that story slightly.
Kelly, I have a suggestion there for on along those lines, because I think the same way. I think it's one of the most powerful stories that I've heard a trainer tell that just relates so directly and supports a key PCA concept. We felt in control. Okay, that's the phrase that stood out to me.
Yep.
We felt in control. And so Mark, what I would do is I would practice telling that story, and I would tell it. I'd tell a 7-minute version. I'd tell a 4-minute version. I'd tell a 2-minute version. I would even strive to tell a 45-second version. Practice, and then pick which one. What's the most reasonable amount of time you can cut out without losing, the impact of the story. That's my suggestion for that.
I think 45 seconds would be way too short for that story, and I know Ruben knows that as well.
It's an exercise.
It's a challenge.
Right. It is too short, but try it. Well, here we go. Anybody know Nick Saban? Yeah, the Alabama coach. This guy is a continual learner. Back in his 3rd year of coaching, watershed moment for him as a coach. Consults a sports psychologist who tells him, I'm worried about the game with the time and me, Kelly, the game with a big, powerful opponent. And he says, just think about the process. Get your players thinking about the process. And that was such his team went on to pull an upset. They played beautifully. And the players said the reason they were able to perform so well in that difficult situation is that we felt in control. So I don't know if that was 45 seconds, if it was a minute and 15 seconds. It's not as, it's not the best version of the story, but just as an example of challenging yourself to tighten it up.
Right. You know what, Ruben and Kelly, and Mark, what might help too is I just got a little light bulb moment here. What might help Mark and the audience for him to do a slide on that, put it in the PowerPoint, and do 4 points that it would cut the amount of time, but it would make the same impact.
Yeah, that's an interesting, Pete, I think that's a great thing to consider also is, do you create a slide that facilitates you speeding up the story? Yeah.
Because that story, as you said, has so much impact, Ruben, and really all you'd need is 4 bullet points. The audience would really get it and probably leave with it.
I don't know. I hesitate. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one because I think sometimes we rely too much on the slides, and I want to hear Mark talk, and which he did, and he was passionate about the story. So I don't know. I'm a little on the fence about that one.
Ruben, I get what you're saying. I understand that. My longtime storytelling mentors have always urged me to include some reasonable amount of detail.
Yeah.
Lenny Rosen's beard. But I think I can still, I mean, it's not 45 seconds or 7 minutes. I think I can include critical detail and compress it.
Mm-hmm.
Brevity is.
And Mark, you would agree. You would agree that the way you tell that story, if we're sitting in a restaurant having a cup of coffee or a beer,
right,
is probably going to be different than the way you're going to tell the story in a
mm-hmm.
workshop where your time is limited,
right,
and you got
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every extra minute of Lenny Rosen is a minute less of Carol Dweck or of,
mm-hmm.
of coach's participation or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I got you.
Yep. Did you have anything else, Ruben?
Yeah, I just want to say that I thought it was an excellent mock session.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was fun. I like it. I like it when I walk, and I feel like I'm in your workshop. If I walk out of your workshop, I say, what am I taking home with me? What I'm taking home is that this guy who's coached for 40 plus years at every level, including professionals, I need to go home and read the intro by Phil Jackson, first of all. I need to go work on my rewarding unsuccessful effort, second of all. I need to figure out what to do with these kids that are chasing butterflies, and now I have some tools to be able to do it. You know, there's certain points that I will bring home with me that you hit home with that's going to make me want to change the way I coach. And that, I think, is the goal of the workshop. It's going to make me, not change the way I coach, but make me a better coach based on your advice. I think that was great.
One of my goals is in anything if I was going to speak to a group of coaches for 20 minutes or 30 minutes prior to a training session, I start with what I want them to get,
mm-hmm.
and then try to make those. And Ruben said it, I think, in a training session last week or the week before. If we have too many goals, we don't have any, and that argues against me trying to get more stuff in, Ruben,
right.
I think. That realize what it is you want them to get and make it as sticky as possible. If
mm-hmm.
it's Lenny Rosen's beard or a kid chasing a butterfly, it's in, our brains work in images, and those are the things we extract from conversations and classrooms. And so anyway, but that's an art, and that takes a lot of work to, which I'm sure you guys do that. Kelly, I've seen you do it. So at any rate, thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
All right, thank you. Peter, we're ready for you now, sir.
I don't know if I'm ready, but here we go.
That's why we practice. This is what I crack up to. I always joke about growth mindset and fixed mindset. And people that are learning to become PCA trainers have such fixed mindsets about certain things. That's why we're learning. We're growing. I want you to put in an effort.
Sure, I'm ready to go.
I think you are. All right. Well, we are your captive audience, so use us as you see fit.
Kelly, the one thing that and maybe I misunderstood this. I thought somebody was going to introduce us, and then we were going to hop in there. So I haven't done anything to prepare who I am.
Okay. Well, that's at a regular PCA workshop, the partner will have your bio, and they will read it to the audience to introduce you. They will tell about your coaching history, your background, where you're from, and then they turn it over to you and say, okay, let's welcome Peter Mulry, and then everybody claps their hand, and then it's go time. So you do not have to repeat. Okay.
I just thought I wasn't going to introduce myself, so I'll just start at that point.
We'll assume you have been introduced.
Correct.
With a few details about your background.
Correct.
And why the credibility you bring to today's workshop. You can assume we've heard that.
Correct. And one other thing, Cal, I don't know. Can I have the PowerPoint slides up?
On my end?
Yeah, because
sure.
I don't know how to do it.
Yep.
Getting you and.
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
Yep, and you know how to click on my little box and then you can see them? If you put the cursor over my box, my face, I think my face, you can see them on your screen, big.
Yeah. Yes.
So hold on, my computer. I had it up and then my computer fell asleep. So give it a second.
Okay.
So what are you? I'll just start at the beginning and then you can tell me when you want to jump to the principal.
If you'll go to honoring the game.
Sure. Yeah, the part of the introduction that we wanted you to do today, and I was talking to Mark about this, is just so that we have an idea of how you will begin the workshop. You know, what is your start with a bang or start smoothly? How will you get us engaged within the first 5 minutes?
I have that. I just didn't do anything about my coaching background or.
Okay, that's fine. So you want me to start with honoring the game, which is this one, the Mulry moment one?
Well, I'm going to wrap up with that. So.
Okay. All right, I'll jump ahead when we get there. So where would you like me to start?
I think one more. One more will give me the elm tree.
Give you the what? I'm sorry.
The elm tree.
The roots. The
roots, yes. Right? This one here?
I can't see. It's too small. There.
Oh, okay. I'll make it bigger. I can make it bigger.
We got it. We got
it. You can see it? I'm going to make it bigger when I start here.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I got a blank screen.
I know, it's coming.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I want to thank you very much for your introduction. I appreciate your thoughts. I'm so glad I could be here this morning with you. I have a very deep place in my heart for coaches, for teachers. I think that it's a place where people think about helping without thinking about dollars. You know, coaches, I've always thought that, you know, when it's about money, people lose 50 IQ points out there. So I'm so glad we're here today. And you know, I've been always one of those folks, you can tell by my gray hair, I've been around the block a little bit. But I want to tell you that probably today I'm going to learn more from you in this time we spend together than probably what you're going to learn from me. But what I'm going to try to do for you today is that I'm going to hopefully put some tools in your toolbox. You know, the third principle that we're trying to do with the Positive Coaching Alliance and what we're trying to get over to you is that we are to the point now, we talked about the elm tree of mastery. We talked about filling the emotional tank of our players. Now, what we're going to try to do is talk a little bit about honoring the game. And since we talk about elm tree, what we're going to do is, you know, the elm tree has some of the strongest roots of any tree. And we've got to have the roots. Whether you have a strong foundation in your house or you have a strong foundation in building your teams or your organization or your culture, we've got to have something to work with in that. So let's take a look at the term roots. Roots is an anachronism for really kind of looking at the 5 points that we can get for honoring the game. And Kel, if you'll switch that next one, you know, roots is an anachronism really for ROOTS. And the first one that we want to do and we want to take a look at is the word R, and that stands for rules. You know, all of us, no matter what we do, whether it be sports, whether it be business, whether it be family, there are some rules that we live by or should live by. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I think with the Positive Coaching Alliance, what we're looking about in rules is just not the rule itself, it's the spirit of the rule. You know, are there some coaches out there that might share with me the difference between rules and the spirit of the rule? Can somebody give me an example or what they feel about that?
I'll give you an example, Pete. In volleyball, if there's a wet spot on the floor, you're allowed to wipe it up and play stops. In between rallies, play stops so that you can wipe it up and so that you aren't playing on a slippery surface. The spirit of the rule is that you will do that only when there's a true wet spot on the floor. But a lot of players now use it as a stalling tactic. Whether there's a wet spot on the floor or not, they'll get the referee's attention, they'll grab the towel hanging on the net, they'll go over and wipe up an imaginary wet spot, and that's not honoring the spirit of the rule.
Okay. Kelly, can you give me any difference of rule and spirit of the rule?
Yeah, I'm just picturing in lacrosse, I played center, and there's a draw to begin the game, and the referee is not. They put the ball in between the two sticks, and then they walk 10 to 15 yards away. So what happens in those few seconds before the referee blows the whistle? There's a lot of jockeying for position. There's a lot of twisting of we're supposed to be completely still, but that never happens. And there were many times, especially in college, where there's a lot of finagling, there's a lot of tactics and strategy going on before the whistle even blows, assuming that we are being perfectly still, which is never the way.
Right, right. Anyone else I'd like to share? Okay, so sometimes that may happen. Most of my exposure has been in baseball, and it's like sometimes the rule says, in between innings in high school, you can only have 7 pitches. Yet you may be playing in 35 or 45-degree weather, and the spirit of the rule have got to change. Do we need to give that young man, or in softball, that young lady a little bit more time? So sometimes it's not just the rules that take us down the road, but the spirit of the rule. And I think more that our young people can understand that, then they understand really why we need rules. Okay, the first though stands for the opposition, and I'd like to tell you a cute story. Mark was talking about a little bit about Coach Saban being at Michigan State and then on to Alabama. I have a good friend that was an All-American under Coach Bryant there when they won all of those championships, and he was a fierce and friendly guy. In fact, he used to coach his players to say, look, we are going to knock these guys down the hardest they've ever been knocked down, but the play doesn't stop until you pick them up and say good play, and then go back to get our play. And I thought that was a great way of, and I watch Alabama, they still do that a lot, even though Coach Bryant is not there, but I've always believed that, that fierce and friendly type of approaching the opponent. And the reality is, sometimes you can't win a baseball game or a soccer game without having an opponent. It's not going to get us down the road unless we play somebody. So be aware of that. Be aware of the respect for your opponent. How about officials? That's what the other O stands for. I tell my guys, how many of us, really like to be criticized when we make a mistake? If you'll go back in our whole mastery, we looked at that you're allowed to make mistakes. And if we're going to do that to ourselves, or we're going to allow ourselves to make mistakes, then we got to give some of that to the officials, because when they make mistakes, most of the time it's just being human. And we've got to be able to look at that. Have you ever been in a situation where you kind of caught yourself maybe with an official and thought, let me kind of back off here because they are human, or let me approach this in a different way, or let me say go out there at a different time? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, in my case, it was sometimes months and years later, looking back with regrets about, the way I had addressed officials in certain situations.
Anyone else like to share?
Pete, I was awful. Terrible at times, and I got better over time. Maybe not because of any moral sense, but because I thought it negatively impacted our players. I thought their focus and concentration went south when my interaction with the umpires were not very good.
Coach, many times, I'm up here giving a seminar, and it's probably because I did a lot of things wrong, not right, that this program has said, Pete, you might have gone back and used this differently, and so kind of here today, too, to kind of pass along some of that to the group. Anyone else like to share?
I had an incident last night playing in an adult competitive volleyball game where it was the last point of the game. It's rally serving, and I had one of the most beautiful sets. I could actually see the words on the side of the ball. The ball was not spinning at all, and the ref called me for a double hit on my set. And I think it was just a bad angle, or he was in a bad mood, and I was just, it was actually the game losing set. He called it double hit. We lost the game because of it after playing 5 games, and I was not happy with that official. So I was trying my best to just blow it off and say, you know what, it was a call he made, even though I disagree with it. It was a call. So it was hard. It was challenging.
And that's a tough thing to do. That is not an easy thing to do. That takes a lot of practice and a lot of awareness to be able to do that, for sure. The T stands for teammates. And folks, I want to share this with you, that I think, to me, the most important thing in life is developing relationships. And this is what teammates is all about to me, is really having and teaching your young people how to relate to each other. I just think that whether it's on and off the field, it's the ability to you know, not just to be a good teammate, but I think here's where commitment on teams come in, is that to me, commitment means I'm going to give all I can to Mark and Kelly and Ruben, all my abilities, all my talent, all what I believe in, and for me to become a better teammate, but also it exposes them to become a better teammate. Let me ask you folks, how do you with being and teaching to become a better teammate on your teams, how do you look at this you know, commitment, teamwork kind of thing? How does that work for you? How do you do that?
Pete, one of the really difficult, I mean, it's not easy for a coach to develop teams. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and sometimes I think they have to develop almost organically. But it seems to me that one of the rules, or one of the foundation principles for being a teammate is respect for others, whatever their role might be, and loyalty, trust, and maintain confidence. We see all kinds of problems when, you know, we have discussions in the locker room and they end up in the press, or kids say something about another player to a kid on another team. So those principles seem to be big deals to me, at least in my experience.
Yeah. Anyone else like to share? You know, along with, and it really kind of works on the same thing. The S, which kind of ties up the roots in honoring the game, talks about self. Well, self is really, no matter what the situation, is never changing your standards. And hopefully we're taking the word standards as high standards. That we are, you know, no matter what the situation is, we take the high road. You know, and because it ties into everything. You know, Kelly, when you were talking about that call last night with the umpire, you were really talking about yourself. It wasn't about the umpire. You know, it was about you, really, and how your standards were and how you were going to keep them high, even though a little bit of emotion got in there and saying, you know, I'd like to tell him this. Well, if you don't, it goes to help you, but it also helps the other people along the way. Anybody else like to share anything about you know, the concept of self here in our honoring the game and our roots philosophy? Okay. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I just think that as coaches we got to be modeling this all the time for our athletes, and really for their parents that are up there in the stands too. Yes,
absolutely, absolutely. And the next thing I'd really like to talk about, we talked about roots, you know, and as we're moving down through the third principle, I'd like to talk to you about, because roots and what we're talking about right now is really about culture. And could you move that one slide up, Kev, if you don't
sure.
mind?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. The really how, I think, and Ruben said it, it's really how we do things here. And it's really not just how we do things here, it's how I do things here, to tie in with the self. That, culture is so important, and people think, well, we don't have a culture. Yeah, you do. It may be dysfunctional, but you have a culture. So, it's like, I want to go back one slide. I wanted to mention the culture first and then come back to dealing how we deal coaches. Could you go back and Cal, I think it's one up. I think it's with the coach in the no, come forward. I'm saying one more.
That one?
Yes.
Okay.
Just, we talked about in the beginning, we talked about toolkit, and I just wanted to mention culture, because culture is really, it's how we do things here, but it's like we coaches, it's about how we do things on the field. It's like, folks, I know you all have a book, the Power of Double Goal Coaching, and I know that it's on page 46, which is mentioned here in the slide, is how do you handle your routine? I can remember back, I probably was like Mark, I was in my 20s and 30s and doing well and probably abrasive as can be and thinking I knew the world. But one thing I did do to try to keep my lip buttoned a little bit, I would chew chewing gum. And because I thought that if I concentrated a little bit on blowing bubbles, that maybe I would keep my mouth shut and I wouldn't be as angry or willing to blast the umpire. Another thing I did was I just go walk down the dugout, or I turn my back if I was in the third base coach, and I walk down the left field line and just say to myself, now, Pete, let's calm down here a little bit. You're important to your team, and you don't need to get kicked out of the ball game, or maybe there'll be a close call along the way, and yada, yada, yada. How do you, Kelly, you told us a little bit about your volleyball situation, being a player in it, but how do you do that as a coach? How do you use that to honor the game? How do you control yourself?
I think I just realized that other people are watching me, as you said. Do some self-talk in the moment when you're getting emotional. You just, I always look down the line at the players, and I realize all those little eyeballs are on me, and it's a really important time. So, I had a coach that one time said, "Complain in your brain," and I always remember that. So, as a coach, whenever I had a problem, I would slap on a smile, get a positive attitude, and complain in my brain as much as I needed to until I got it out.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else like to share that, how they handle their self-control? Okay. But just, I think for us mostly, just to be aware of what a little ritual we can do to keep us present. We preach it to our kids, and if we don't do it ourselves as models, I think we're in a little bit of trouble. Could you go on to the next slide, Cal?
Sure.
And yeah, I'm going to kind of talk about the Mulry moment a little bit. This slide kind of refers to an incident that happened, and I hope I can get it all right. And I would show this because I can't remember quite, and I don't have the ability to show it now, but I would show it right now.
Well, the video comes first, but if you wanted to change the order so that the video came with this slide, you can do that. But the video actually comes before this part here. This is the video.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it. I would show that. I'm not going to show it to you because you know what it is.
Okay.
I would show that now.
Okay.
Because I want to, with the background we've given them, I want to show it now and say, I don't know, there's going to become a time, and I like the quote, I would use that quote that Jim Thompson has, and, where it says, if you coach long enough, it's going to come up where you're going to have many Mulry moments. And so I'm going to show you what I'm talking about and then show this tape and then come back and ask them, well, can you think of any you've done before? Or can you think about one or two that might be on the grill right now? So that's kind of how I would wrap up my third principle was one is showing this and then come back. And then I would say, again, just remember in what we're doing, the honoring the game is best said by just using that anachronism as best we can. And I would stop my principle right there.
Okay, so I'm sorry, just wait real quick. Clarify for me real quick. So the question you would ask after the video is for them to pick out one or two things that, I'm sorry, I might have just missed what you said.
No, I would pick out either A, what Mallory moment have they had in their coaching career?
Okay.
Or what would you like to see be a Mallory moment in your coaching today?
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, thank you. And you had 40 seconds to spare, so your timing was good. Yep.
I didn't know whether to continue on and come back and visit. You know, we talked about how our legacy wants to be. I didn't know where that fit in with the principle. Should I have gone a little further and talked a little bit about the legacy?
Well, for the flow of the workshop, usually after the honoring the game principle is finished, then you do go into the scenario menu,
right,
which takes up some time, and then the legacy piece is at the very end.
Right.
So, I mean, if you would have finished honoring the game and you had 5 minutes left, I would have probably said, keep going. I want to hear how you're going to wrap it up. But
okay,
for the sake of time, I think you were fine.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Well done. Different approach than Mark, and I think it was interesting to hear the different approaches that you guys have. And I think it's really neat too. You know, Pete, your voice is very pleasant to listen to. You know, you have a very assertive voice, but it's not in any way arrogant. And I think that's a gift that you have, and I'm interested in what you have to say. I think you did a nice job at stressing certain things over others. Again, similar to what I said with Mark, your choice of words was very good. A couple of the words that I just put down, I circled just to let you know as a tip, when you're talking about like ROOTS, it's an acronym, not an acronism, and I think that's the third grade teacher in me. I just wanted to correct that.
Okay.
Yeah, just an acronym. And then when you got to rules, and we use the word opponent, you said opposition. It's not a big deal, but you know, we talk about the opponents more than the opposition. Sure. So you know, those were just two little word things. And then in terms of your questioning, I think that's going to come too when you asked a question to us and we didn't give you an answer right away. When I ask a question to an audience and I expect like every hand to shoot up and you get nothing, I think, okay, I didn't phrase that question well. So even I think with some of us here, I knew your point, I knew what you were trying to get at, but I purposely wasn't answering because I wanted you to realize that, wait, maybe that was unclear. Maybe my question was a little vague. So, like for example, when you said, I think your question about the rules was very clear. Your question on opponents was clear. On officials, where have you been challenged? That was very clear. But then when you got to teammates, you said kind of like, how do you do teamwork? And none of us answered because I think I
probably should have said, how do you develop teamwork?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Just very, very clear, because when you have an audience of people, they're going to be nervous to answer anyway. Just human nature is I don't want to answer wrong. So unless you're very specific with the question that you ask, and even at the end when you said self, I think your question was like, does anybody want to share anything about self? I think that would be a little too vague to get someone to volunteer. Ruben did, but I think it would be a little bit too vague to get an audience to say, oh yeah, I'll tell you more. Unless we always have that one person in the room that shoots his hand up no matter what. Right. That we wish other people would answer as well. But just to be real specific, when have you seen a player really rise above their peers and really do something that you saw their self-respect right there? You know, something like that really gets them thinking, I know the answer I want to give here.
Right.
I thought overall your mix of personal experience stories and the concepts was very good. You sprinkled in questions to get us talking, to get us thinking about it, and that's good because this principle is at the end, and a lot of people just default to let me just lecture for 10 minutes and tell you about all this. So your questions weren't only the same. How were you challenged in this one? Give me an example in this one. I thought that was a nice job. I like the way you also brought up your chewing gum example. You needed a self-control routine. We could relate to that. You had a problem with it as a coach. We have problems with it too. This is how you handled it. I thought it was really good. The only other tip that I put down was one of the things, and I actually didn't even notice this until I went to a workshop recently. I was watching someone else do a workshop, and one of the things that I realized was, as adults, we know the value of respecting teammates as adults that have been there. But as kids, it's almost important to bring up a point because you said it, we all know it's important. Relationships are very important to me. I'm going to give all that I can to my teammates, which is a very adult way to look at teammates. But when you're coaching 9, 10, 11-year-olds and younger, they don't look at the value of teammates. Just psychologically, stages of development, they're looking out for number one. So in order to be number one, a lot of times kids feel they have to squelch their teammates. They have to put their teammates down in order to look better. So I think in terms of teammates, I like how you said teammates are valuable, but maybe bringing up a point now, how do 10 and 11-year-olds feel about their teammates? Yeah. And again, I had never really seen that angle on it, and when I saw it in a workshop, I thought, what a great thing to bring up. That how does little Jimmy here see his 10-year-old neighbor as a teammate? What might he feel? Is he thinking, oh, I have to build, Tommy up so that our team can be better? That's not always the first thought. So I just wanted to add that in because I thought that was a good point to bring up. Ruben or Mark, do you guys want to comment?
I'll jump in just quickly because I think Kelly summarized so well. One of the parts I enjoyed the most, Pete, lot of wonderful things. I really like what you did the very first minute. Your opening. You did it in 1 minute, and I thought you really set a nice tone for the whole workshop. And I wrote down, deep place in my heart for coaches and teachers. I think that's a powerful start.
And I wrote down, when money's involved, people lose 50 IQ points. I thought that was great.
That's a fact.
Yeah, it's a sticky point. I'll remember that. It makes sense.
Yeah, I guess, Pete, I think I like it so much because I think that it is possible to start smoothly and an impactful start in a minute or two. I think that sometimes we make that start too long, and I thought it was very effective.
Ruben, I had lunch with Mark, and then we talked a little bit. Then I went out to see, and I always can't remember his last name, Eric
Eisendrath.
Yes, he gave a presentation to the Hillsborough County coaches.
A workshop?
Yes.
Okay.
And in my watching him, I was very aware of how quickly he moved. Where I probably would have, without seeing that, have thought, oh, it's got to be slower. No, he moved it, and he was super, and engaged the audience, but he moved through it. He didn't. And there were times the audience tried to hang him up, and he just said, "We got to move forward, folks." And I thought it was excellent. So that's what I tried to do this morning. I tried to be quicker. I tried to move through it more rapidly than I did my last practice. So
there's such a thing as moving at a good clip without talking fast. Doesn't mean that you talk faster. Doesn't mean that you speed up and say things. No, you overall you just keep the workshop moving forward. Yeah.
And then it's great because if you do keep it at a good clip, then when you get to the end and you realize, wow, I've said everything I want to say, I have some time here. Because one of the biggest critiques that we get on the evaluations at the end of the workshop is more time for questions and answers.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one that I get a lot. Sometimes I think I'm going to leave 20 minutes for questions and I leave, 6. So I think it's nice if you can get through everything you want to get through, then you have a little more flexibility. Then if someone asks a question, you can give a personal story.
Right.
Better to keep it simple and go back.
On question and answers, what I would suggest there, Kelly, and maybe you do this, because I've seen trainers go through and leave time for question and answers and no one has a question. And then they feel like, oh, shoot, I've ended the workshop. So I would say do the question and answer period before you end the workshop, and so that if they don't have questions and you've left 20 minutes for question and answers or 8 minutes for question and answers, that maybe you do one more. Okay, well, let's do one more scenario and we'll wrap up.
Well, I've often done it before the Herm Edwards video. Like, I do it right at the end of the scenarios. When I'm done the scenarios, say, okay, how about some scenarios that you have as coaches, maybe ones that we don't have up here, something specific that's on your mind right now. And then I will wrap up the workshop with the very last you can make a difference video. What is your legacy? How do you want to be remembered as a coach? So, yeah, I agree. You don't want to leave it to the very end and then go, okay, no questions, good night. So, Mark, did you have any comments for Pete?
Yeah, Pete, I thought it was good, and I thought it was very good, and I thought it was great that your timing was so exact, and I agree with Kelly that your speaking style is very good. What happened? This is a question for everybody. When we get to this roots business, and we're supposed to respect rules, and I didn't say it because I don't want to mess with Pete's presentation, but I haven't figured out how to answer. If I were in an audience and I were running or presenting this workshop, I would ask me, or in response to, do any of you have any examples of how you might run into problems respecting rules? I'd say I'm a baseball coach. The whole sport doesn't respect the rules. I mean, from cheating to create strikes to knocking guys down at second when you aren't really trying to get to the base, to sign stealing. How, and Ruben and Kelly, in your sports, I'm not sure, and maybe it occurs everywhere, or maybe baseball's just is the worst.
No. You're asking a good question there. So first of all, if I was asked that question, I'd say, well, I would love to be an umpire where the catcher frames pitches, because they're calling the ball and strike for me. Okay, as soon as I see that catcher's mitt move towards the strike zone, I know it's a ball. So, and I'm not a baseball man, Mark. But it sure seems to me. It sure seems to me that if the ball's a strike, there is no need for the catcher to frame the pitch. So that's one where I actually think we've gotten to a point where, by trying to bend the rules, the catchers are hurting their team and their pitcher. But yeah, breaking up the double play. You're allowed to break up a double play. The question is, what standards do we have? And by the way, why do we have rules in baseball? What rules do
to make competition fair?
Okay, fairness. What else? Why does a batter have to wear a helmet?
Oh, safety, right.
Yeah. So let's keep in mind that a lot of rules are to keep the participants safe, and in our kids, these high school boys and girls safe, or these 6- and 7-year-olds safe. So what standards are we going to have and live up to? So anyway, Mark, that's a little bit of how I would handle that.
Good.
Yeah.
Pete, I thought it was good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, well done. So then for you two for next week, it's actually your choice. You've already done emotional tank and you've already done one other principle. If you'd like to, really go through the entire workshop, you're welcome to switch and do a different principle next week for the final. And then, you've pretty much gone through every principle in the workshop. So that's something I recommend. Or if you want to, brush up on some of the suggestions and do this one again for us, that's also a choice.
Well,
I'm going to do principle 1 next. That'll be good. That's a good challenge.
Yeah, that's ideally what we would like people to do. That's why we put in the e-tank, the practice session, and then the final, because we'd like to give you an opportunity to do all 3. Not everyone takes us up on the offer, but we're really appreciative that you 2 did. So thank you very much.
And it's next week, Cal, is that right?
It's going to be, yeah, the finals are going to be scheduled for next week. And I'm going to have a lot more, I have 2 workshops I'm doing next week, but I'm going to have some flexibility in there, Ruben and I, and we're also going to invite people from Tampa to be involved too. Some of the people down there that want to jump in and, be an audience for you guys. So that would be great.
And I want to say this, and I don't know how Mark feels, but I'm going to say this to you guys who are lead trainers. I think for me, it's much easier if I was in a room with a group of people and my PowerPoint was right there.
Yes.
It's much more difficult to give it here.
So Kelly, I know you have some. First of all, we know this is the hardest. We know this is the hardest, and it's like as a coach, you want practice to be more challenging and harder than the game. You want the game to feel easy for your players, and so when you get out there and you got your workshop up and you have a room full of coaches, it's going to feel easier. So that's one thing. Secondly, I don't know, Kelly, if there's a way if Pete wants to arrange to meet with. To actually, I forget Pete's location, but
Tampa.
if he wants to do that mock live.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to talk to Mark about it in Tampa. I don't know how close you guys are to the Tampa office. I've been in the office, and they do have a room that's very capable of doing this. Deborah Edwards in Minnesota does live finals. So people through this course that live in Minnesota are actually going to be doing it for a live audience, and she has a laptop in the corner so that we can watch, which is fantastic. So I would love to, and there's enough trainers in this course from Tampa. I think there's 4 or 5 of you. So if we can arrange that, even if it has to take another extra week to do it, I think that's ideal. That's what I would like to do. So 1, 2, 3. There's 6 of you from Tampa in this training course. So I will. I'll talk to Mark and Allison and see if that's an option, and you'd be willing to go to the Tampa office to do it. I would love that. I would prefer that.
That's up to Mark. I mean, I didn't want to open a can of worms.
No, I love worms being open. Especially, I mean, I love doing that. I don't like to make it mandatory for the executive directors to say, okay, here's another duty for you. Now arrange a time, get an office, get people together, and do it. But as I said, we have a chapter in Minnesota, and that's how she does it. She likes it that way, so it's good. It'd be good for them to see you too. I think it's beneficial on both ends.
So how do you do that? You have 6 people do them serially in one spot?
Yeah, well, what we've done.
20 minutes.
Yeah, it's time consuming, but yeah, or maybe 2 different days if that's a little bit easier for their schedule. Maybe an evening and a morning session, whatever works. But at least it's an option for you to do.
Right. I've got a few time constraints. I've got responsibilities during the day and in the early evening, and
so let's say this gets set up and Mark makes a 2-hour slot or 3-hour slot on a morning for 5 of you to come in. You can come in and like you did, you can support each other and listen to each other if you have the time, or you could go in, do yours, and take off. Or if it doesn't work, the other 4 people do theirs live, and you do what everyone else in the course is doing. You do it via Hangout. You've already done 1 or 2 of these. You know the routine. Yeah. So it just creates some options. So I think all good.
Yeah, I'll talk to them and I'll see what we can get arranged down there, because that's what I would prefer. And I don't even know if Eric's going to be down there. Eric's down in Tampa a lot. I don't know if he's going to be down there within the next 2 weeks, but maybe that's an option for him to be able to do while he's down there. Set that up.
Beautiful.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yep. Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Kelly.